Ladies and gentlemen, can we please start? Just before we start officially, if we can please make sure that we have our microphones on mute so that we can avoid any interruptions as the speakers are doing the business for the day. Welcome you all officially to the 60th celebration for the University of Zululand. This is a very special gathering and a fitting one, given the twists and turns as we all saw this year due to COVID-19. My name is Zulu. I am the co-founder at Algorithm Lab, a technology company based here at the Richards Bay Industrial Development Zone Techno Hub. And we are part and parcel of this program, as well as some other programs together with the Department of Computer Sciences. I'm a former student of the university, by the way. This is home. Today, we are going to be having a special session that I think is important, not just for the academic society, but for society as a whole. As you may have seen, we're going to be having a virtual lecture on identity theft and protection of personal information by Mr. Manqoba Mngomezulu. We're going to give you just a brief on who Manqoba Mngomezulu is, but also be aware that October is a cyber security awareness month. So it's very important, crucially important, that we all are aware of the threats as well as the impact of cyber platforms in our lives, in our daily lives, as we all know the impact, especially as we saw the acceleration due to COVID-19 restrictions, where pretty much everyone, an old granny, a young child, is forced to use cyber platforms, digital platforms, to access basic services, social services, for them to be able to advance themselves. But before we proceed with the business of the day, we'll ask the legendary Prof. Adekan to officially welcome us all before we can have a very special lecture by Mr. Manqoba Mngomezulu. Prof. Adekan, please take it away, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. All protocols observed. I'd like to officially welcome you to University of Zululand 60-year celebrations. It's been a series of lectures, and computer science is pleased to be hosting this particular one, titled Identity Theft, Protection of Personal Information, POPI. And who is best to talk on a topic like this than our own Mr. Mngomezulu? So he'll be introduced shortly. I hope you guys will enjoy the whole presentation. Thank you very much for attending. I hand over to Mr. Zulu to continue.
Thank you very much, Prof. And thank you to everyone who is joining us live on this live webinar today. We were trying to stream live this session for those of our friends on YouTube and Facebook, but unfortunately, we seem to be having technical issues. How ironic for a Department of Computer Sciences to have technical issues, but yeah, that is what is happening, ladies and gentlemen. Before I waste time, because we're on limited time, let me introduce our guest speaker for the day. Shortly after his lecture, after his presentation, we are going to have a question and answer session where we all will be invited to participate, and hopefully we make this a vibrant engagement that we can learn from, that we can share our insights and be able to shape how we want this cyber world that we're living in today to be. It's very important that we all participate in that engagement. So what you can do is simply raise your hand through the option on Zoom, and yeah, then from there you'll be able to participate in that session. Mr. Manqoba Mngomezulu is an alumnus of the University of Zululand. He is an author, he's an entrepreneur, he is a speaker, a great speaker, if I may add, and he is a security consultant as well. He's an information security and cybersecurity consultant with over 12 years of experience in the field of information technology, as well as cybersecurity. His main focus on information security field is information security governance, information security program development, security enterprise architecture, IT security risk management, as well as IT security awareness. He's written a book about protection of personal information titled Bring Back My Identity, which provides an easy to follow guidelines on how to protect any personal and confidential information and how to guard against information thieves. And what should you discover that you are a victim of information theft? If I can just add, it's also ironic that we're having this session just after weeks when the Social Dilemma documentary was released on Netflix, which has caused so much controversy for the company that is Facebook. We also saw, I think it was earlier on in the year, if I'm not mistaken, was it last year, with the Great Hack, also showcasing as well, the back end of information and what technology companies are doing with some of our information. And I think that Mr. Manqoba Mngomezulu is going to be able to elaborate on some of the things that we need to be aware of and what we can do to protect ourselves. Mr. Manqoba Mngomezulu, please take the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Langa, and I greet everybody that is present in this visual seminar. So I greet all of you, and I observe all protocols, but I'll also just love to, make a special greetings to my professor, Professor Adegun. I mean, with me, it all started here. And I remember that I joined the university, the department in 2002. Yeah, I was doing my first year in computer science in 2002. It has been a journey ever since. I guess maybe like some of us, maybe also some of you here, it was my first time actually interacting with a computer. Then I think things have changed now. People they start interacting with computers as early as possible. But with some of us back then, our high schools did not have computers. So when we moved to the university, we had our first encounters or our first experience with the tool, and we had to understand the tool and also learn how to use the tool and learn about the tool. It was just a whole lot of things that were happening at the same time. But we are grateful, or I am grateful for, the guidance, the mentorship, and everything that was provided, the support that was provided to me and some of my colleagues. Even today, that we joined the university with, and some of them we still even interact even today. We still meet each other even today. Where I am, I'm based in Gauteng. We meet each other. You might not know them. You might not know them, but the likes of Petrol Shabang. I'm sure Prof will remember them. Others. Gugu, Kalala, yeah, just a lot of them, Pile. We still meet, and it's still good that ever since that year, 2002 until now, we still connected and we still speak the same language of computer science. So thank you very much for inviting me in this wonderful celebration. It's an honor for me to be part of what is happening in this university, and it's really something that is heartwarming for me, you know, to be part of this as a person that was once a student in this wonderful university and shaped me, you know, I guess, to be the kind of a person that I am today. So thank you very much. So I will then go straight to the presentation, which is about identity theft and protection of personal information. You know, just to give a brief background, identity theft, basically, it is when your personal information is stolen, because your personal information, it's your identity. So that is your name, your ID number, you know, your residential address, or any information that identifies you is your identity. So when that information is stolen, it could be used for different reasons. Information thieves, they can use that information and sell it into the, you know, dark market, or they can use that information and go and open up accounts on your name, and you find out that you now have an account that you did not open. Or some other people, they wake up and find that they are married to people that they don't know. All those things, all those cases, they happen when your identity is stolen and it is used for malicious things. Now, the protection of personal information, then, it is an act that the government of South Africa introduced to make sure that people's identities are protected. So the law aims to protect people's identities and eventually reduce the cases of identity theft. All right. So let's see. Yeah, just a background again, as far as information breach is concerned per industry last year, and I think it is very important to note that these numbers have increased from the previous years. All right, and the leading industry that is experiencing a lot of information breach, it's you know, the business sector, followed by the health sector, you know, because those are the institutes that process a lot of information. But again, it is important to note that the education sector as well, it's part of these statistics, and it makes sense because there are a lot of personal information from students and also employees of the university or education sector that gets processed by the university or education, you know, sector. So by default, that makes, you know, the education sector a target of information thieves, and it's very important that we understand this as we receive and process people's personal information. Automatically we become the target, and it becomes so important that we understand such, so that we can put necessary controls in place to protect the information that we've got access to. Because when we have that information, we automatically assume responsibility to protect that information. It's very important to note. Okay, just to give a brief background about the POPI Act itself, the intention of the POPI Act, it is really to bring South Africa in line with other international standards. You know, there are countries out there that cannot interact or even trade with countries that does not have laws in place that governs the protection of people's personal information. So now the Act, it wants to bring South Africa into that realm of interacting and trading transparently and confidently, you know, because we now have laws that governs the protection of information. Okay, and now there's a governing body or information regulator that will ensure, or rather that is ensuring, that companies or people that process people's personal information, they take into consideration their privacies. And that body is led by Advocate Pansing Ngagula. Together with her team, they will make sure that all organizations that does not comply with the Act, they are being penalized. And also, as a data subject is a person that that have personal information, or rather a person whose personal information is being processed. You can send your complaints to the information regulator, and then the information regulator will process your complaint against the institute that is negligent about protecting your personal information. Okay, again, on the background, who does this POPI applies to? Basically, it applies to everybody. It applies to private organizations, it applies to public organizations, it applies also to institutes like universities, you know, because again, such institutes, they collect and process people's personal information. So any institute that collects and processes people's personal information, this act applies to them. But again, for interest's sake, it is very important to note that there's certain bodies that are excluded from this act, and those organizations that needs to process people's personal information for the benefit of the public, like the police services, for example. They might not need to get your consent to process your personal information if they need to protect the public. So such organizations are excluded from this act. Now, why is this act important? Again, as I've mentioned, it just gives effect to a constitutional right to privacy, because according to the Constitution, every person has a right to privacy, and that is why sometimes, you know, you'll receive a lot of phone calls from people that you don't know trying to sell you stuff. You'll receive a lot of SMSs from people that you don't know trying to sell you stuff. Those people are invading your privacy. So this law then it is instituted so that as a person, you can have your privacy back to you. And such people that uses people's personal information in an unlawful manner, they will have to deal with the consequences that will be imposed by this law. So that is the importance of this law. Basically, again, it regulates the manner at which personal information is being processed by organizations like the University of Zululand. Okay, so it's very important that we understand why this law exists and what are the consequences of not complying with the requirements of this law. And again, maybe you might be aware already that this law came into effect on the 1st of July 2020, and from that time, every organization is given 12 months to put all controls in place to make sure that they protect people's personal information. After 12 months, the regulator might assess the organization, might assess even the University of Zululand to see if the personal information of students and staff is it well protected or not. And if there are non-compliances that are being found, then the university will be fined. And I will share a little bit later fines that are associated with non-compliancy. All right. So that is very important to note. Now, what constitutes personal information? Now, this is any information that identifies a person. Any information that identifies a person constitutes personal information. I've made a number of examples here with regards to that. It could be your name, your surname, your gender, your race, sexual orientation, your age, your email address. So any information that can link back to a person, that is personal information, and that is the information that needs to be protected. So now it means, as the university, we need to start to think, if we collect people's personal information, we then need to review the type of information that we're collecting, to say, do we need all this information to serve our business objectives, or we need limited information? And if we don't need every information, then we must only collect the information that we need, because if we collect everything, that means we are putting a risk to every information that we have collected, and we are making ourselves to be liable to protect every information that we have collected. So this is just examples of the type of personal information that you have as a person. And it's important for you to note this as well. As you go out there and interact with other organizations, they will request information from you. You need to know the type of information that they are requesting, and also the reason for collecting that information. But I'll touch a little bit later on that. Now, who are the data subjects whose personal information should be protected? Now, the data subjects are natural people or like businesses or organizations. whose personal information is collected and processed by organizations. So as I've mentioned, it could be a human being, but also when you speak of a data subject, it's also an organization. So for example, say the university has suppliers and they collect information about those suppliers. The supplier registration number constitutes as personal information. The names and the ID numbers of the directors, that is also personal information. So when we protect personal information, we're not only limiting that to human beings, but also identifiable information of an organization. That also that is also information that needs to be protected. So both human beings and organizations are data subjects. Okay, now the Act talks about 8 requirements or principles that needs to be observed by any organization that collects and processes people's personal information. Now, within the processing of personal information, there is a cycle which is collecting personal information. Now, it means during collection of personal information, we need to apply these 8 principles of the Act. When we use information, we need to take into consideration the principles of the Act. When we store information, how are we storing it? You know, is it secure where you're storing it? What are the security measures that we've put in place to ensure that information cannot be accessed where it is being stored? When information is being retrieved, how are we retrieving it? You know, who have the right to access that information? When information is being destroyed, how are we destroying that information in such a way that that information cannot be reconstructed again? You know, throughout the processing of information, we need to take into consideration, you know, these 8 principles. So the first principle is accountability. What does that mean is that the organization is accountable to ensure that all the principles of the Act are applied and the organization complies to that. Now, the primary person that takes a responsibility is the head of the university, according to the Act. That is the first person that is accountable to ensure that the organization has implemented the Act. And secondly, the people that have access to people's personal information, they are also accountable in ensuring that the information that they've got access to, it is well protected. Because should it happen that they leak people's personal information and through investigations it is discovered that an employee in the Department of Computer Science leaked a student's personal information, and that information was further used to commit identity theft, then the university will have to be accountable, or the university will account on that, and the university will be liable for that data leakage. So it's very important that we understand that accountability is not only limited to the head of the university, but also to the people that have access to people's personal information. Okay, and again, accountability, it goes hand in hand with the fines associated with non-compliance, which will be assumed by both the university and the person or the individual that is responsible for data leakage. Processing limitation, it simply means that we need to process we need to limit the information that we collect. So if we're not going to need every information, then we must not collect every information. So if we register students and we know that the information that is very primary for that registration process is the name and the ID number, for example, then there's no need then to collect a physical address and health records and so on and so on and so on. Because when we collect that information, then we must protect that information. So the idea here is that you must collect less so that your responsibility to protect is also limited. And again, in processing limitations, it simply means that before you collect any people's personal information, they must give you a consent. for you to process their information. So you cannot just collect people's personal information without them agreeing. And that is the requirement that this act, is putting in place, to say people must give consent before you process their information. So this means that perhaps also the privacy policy in the university's website might need to be updated, or if it's not there, it needs to be uploaded, which tells people that comes to the website of the university about the commitment of the university in protecting people's personal information. It's very important to note that. Purpose specification, it simply means that when you collect people's personal information, you must tell them why you collect that information and how are you going to protect that information. All right. Further processing, it means if you collect my information as a student and you have already told me the purpose of collecting that information, which might be registration purposes, you cannot then use that information for another purpose different from the one that you have initially indicated. All right, so the Act prohibits further processing of people's personal information. If you need to use my information for another purpose, then you need to contact me and let me know that the information that I've initially provided to you for registration purposes, now you want to use that information for a research purpose. So we need to do that, because should it happen that you further process a person's personal information for a total different reason that was never communicated to the data subject, the data subject can lodge a claim against you to the information regulator, and you don't want that. Information quality means that the information that we have collected and processing, it has to be complete, it has to be valid, and it has to be accurate. So we have that responsibility to make sure that the information that we're processing, it is of high quality. And if not, we need to contact the data subject and update that information accordingly. Okay, openness, it means that there should be openness between the responsible party, in this case, which is the university, and the data subject. Again, this speaks to being open when you collect people's personal information, them giving consent for you to collect and process their information, and also them knowing who is collecting their information, their address, and the contact number. Should they want to update their information, who do they need to contact to say, please update my information? When you collected my information, I was single, but now I'm married. So now the information, it goes back to information quality, to say the information has to be, accurate. So there should be that openness. And now the university needs to put controls and processes in place that will ensure transparency between them and their clients, which are students and also partners of the university. Security safeguards, it speaks about the protection of this information, limiting access to confidential information, and also protecting information on storage that might include encrypting, the laptops that store people's personal information, or the servers that store people's personal information, ensuring that the network, is also secured, so that so that people cannot, or unauthorized people cannot access the internet and tamper, with the systems that houses or processes people's personal information. And data subject participation, it simply means that data subject have a right to find out what type of information do you have about them. They need to know if we have shared their information with a third party, and also they need to know if their information has been leaked, or if there's been a data breach. They need to know all those things. Data subject participation, that's what it is all about. And also, should there be a breach, data subjects need to be notified that your information has been accessed by unauthorized people. And should you perhaps receive a phone call and from people that you don't know and asking you to confirm your information, do not confirm your information. The data subject, they need to know if their information has been accessed by unauthorized people. That is very important to note. Now, what are the next steps? What is it that you need to know so that you can protect your identity, which is your personal information? And also, what is it that you need to know as a data subject so that you can challenge even the people that collect and processes your information? When you need to know that you can object to the processing of your personal information on reasonable grounds. Again, we need to understand that when personal information is collected, it is because the organization, they need to execute a business mandate. So they need your information to fulfill a business requirement. At the same time, you have a right to privacy. So if you are not comfortable, according to the Act, POPI Act, you can object to the processing, but you need to give reasonable grounds as far as that is concerned. As I've mentioned as well, as a data subject, you need to be notified should your information be accessed by unauthorized people, and a responsible party, which is the university in this case, need to implement processes that will facilitate the notification of data subject should there be a data leak or a breach. All right, and then another thing that you need to know is that as a data subject, you can find out, the information that the university have about you, and you can request that information to be corrected or even to be deleted. It's the right that you have. But then again, for the university, there are things that they need to do, to make sure that they prepare themselves or they put controls in place that will ensure that they comply with the Act. One of the things that they need to do is to appoint an information officer and the deputies. Now, those are the people that will ensure that they implement the requirements of the Act into the university's business processes. And one of the ways of doing that is to perform a privacy gap assessment to find out where are the gaps in the business processes of the university. So throughout the university, from registration, when we collect information, now we're collecting only the information necessary for a registration process, or we're collecting more than enough information. And if we're collecting more than enough information, which information can we eliminate? And that is the process of a privacy gap that needs to be performed, and then it has to be performed throughout the organization in different departments where there is a flow of personal information. Also, even with the Department of Computer Science, as students enroll into the departments, they write assessments or tests, their results are being captured. All that, how are we capturing or how are we protecting the results of these students? How are we limiting access to this information? All those are the things that needs to be performed to identify gaps, so that then, there could be controls that need to be designed to close the gaps. And in that way, then the organization will move towards a compliance state. All right. As I draw towards the closure, there are top risks facing the organizations that does not comply with the Act. Now, these are the risks, or rather, that an organization will face, which is a monetary fine of up to 10 million or 10 years in prison. All right. So again, as I've mentioned, the head of the university takes primary accountability or responsibility towards this, but also the person responsible for data breach will also face the same consequences. That person could be fined up to 10 million or up to 10 years imprisonment. Now, this might look like a very big figure, and that might not be implemented, but I think it's very important that this is very serious. And the information regulator, it's a body that has been established to ensure that such funds are executed. Now, this body as well, it needs money for it to function. Okay, for it to have money, it will really have to make sure that it finds organization. That's how it can really self-fund itself, so that it can function the way it's supposed to. So this money will come from these fines that they will be executing. So this is very important, and it's very serious to take note of. And again, I mean, as a university, we might lose students if students know that their personal information is not protected, or their personal information was accessed by unauthorized people, and now their information is everywhere. Chances are students might not want to enroll with the university, and we don't want that, because when students enroll, that's how, you know, the university can keep operating. Without students, there's no university. All right, so it's very important that we protect ourselves from such serious reputational damage as well. Even the students, or even partners or suppliers, they can even go on social media and write negative things about the university that will damage the image of the university. And image is everything. It has to be protected. It has to be well positioned to the people that are perceiving it. People need to trust the image of the university. So there could be a lot of things that can go wrong if we do not protect people's personal information as a university. And I think as a Department of Computer Science, we are perceived as a technology hub of the university. And so we, in all this, somehow we need to lead by example. We need to recommend, you know, strategic solutions that the university needs to implement, even in departments that are not technologically savvy, so that the information of people in that department, or even throughout the university, it is well protected. So not to put a pressure on the Department of Computer Science, but again, as a department that is technology driven, it's really very important that we understand the magnitude of the scope of being POPI compliant, but also just the protection of people's personal information that is, you know, on a physical form, printed papers, but also digital information that is stored on computers, or information that is accessed via computers and all that. All that information, it has to be protected. But again, just going beyond that, information is not only limited to, you know, physical or digital. Also verbal information, what I'm sharing, it's also information. And sometimes we talk about sensitive information. So again, how do we protect, you know, sensitive information that is being spoken by different people, or even within the organization? What type of information can we publicly speak about? What type of information we are not allowed to speak about publicly? So when we speak of information, it's information that is presented in different forms, be it a picture, you know, any information. We must protect that information, so that we protect our identities from being stolen, but moreover, we also protect the information that the university is relying on, you know, to achieve its business objectives, which is to serve students, to serve the country, and to serve the world. And I think with the way things are going forward, with the whole online learning, there will be, and there should be, a lot of collaboration among universities, not only locally but also internationally. And against this act, protection of personal information, it is established to ensure that as a University of Zululand, we are a trusted partner with any other universities out there, because we have taken responsibility to protect people's personal information. And by so doing, then we are further positioning ourselves for strategic and great partnership. So thank you very much, sir. I will end it here unless there are any questions, but I'll bring it back to you, Lang.
Mr. Langa, over to you.
Sorry, I had a problem there with my internet. Apologies for that. Thank you so much, Mr. Mngomezulu, for the presentation. I'm sure there must be a lot of questions. I, for one, have got a question for a start, to kickstart this question and answer session that I believe will be a few minutes, and then we can wrap up the lecture and the celebration for the day. As I indicated earlier, if you have a question, please raise your hand through the feature that we have there on Zoom. Mr. Manqoba, so the first question is, and given the fact that this is the Department of Computer Sciences, we've got computer scientists in the room, what is the role and how can we, as we develop these technologies, these solutions, in digital format, how can we ensure that as we build these technologies, as we build these software systems, as we build these apps that should be used in communities, that we also protect the information of the very people who are going to be the beneficiaries? That is my question to you, Mr. Mngomezulu.
Okay, thank you, Longa. So let me just see if I understood your question. So your question is, how do we make sure that as we build applications or tools, we make sure that we protect people's personal information? Is that what you're asking?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, so I think the best way to go about it there is to understand that the protection of personal information is not something that needs to come into our mind once we are done with the application. So we need to integrate the protection of personal information from the start. So when we do a feasibility study about that application, we need to consider the type of information that will be processed by this application, and how will people, submit their personal information to this application, and how will they be accessing that information? How will personal information be stored? We need to think about that right from the beginning, so that as we design with security controls. And in that, even when we test that application, we don't just test the functionality of the application, but rather we also test the security of of people's personal information that will be processed by the application. So that's how we need to do it. We need to integrate security from the beginning, and implement security controls as part of building the application.
Thank you so much, Mr. Manqoba. I've learned a lot from that, given the fact that our organization, that's what we do on a day-to-day basis. So thank you very much for that. There is another question. By the way, you can also, for those who may not be comfortable with speaking, you can also just drop a question in the form of a chat. There's a chat feature there that you can just write and send your question. So Mr. Mngomezulu, there's a question from Umpemba. Uti, how does one report the breach to Popia?
Yeah, so Mngomezulu is also one of the guys that we started with in 2002. Yeah, it's also great to have him here as well. So one of the ways currently is to go through the website of the information regulator, and contact the information regulator or the board and report any breach that you have experienced or any breach that you think has happened against your personal information. Obviously, they will investigate just to validate that report. But how do you report? Currently you report via their website. I think it's under the Department of Justice. Yeah, I think it's under the Department of Justice. But I think you can also just Google email address of the information regulator, and then you should be able to get more information on how to go about reporting a data breach. But going to the website, the Department of Justice, there is a link there of the information regulator, and then you can report via that. Whether they will be quick to attend to the case, I'm not sure, but I think for you is to report. That's the first step, and then we can always take it from there.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mngomezulu. Are there any other questions before I bombard Mr. Mngomezulu with questions? Okay, I see there's a question there from, I think, not sure there, don't know if it's a Mr. It's a Mrs. Peter Mutang.
Good day, colleagues. It's Peter Mtanga here, an alumni of the Department of Computer Science. And thanks a lot, Manqoba, for the wonderful presentation. One thing that I take home message here for us as academics who teach computer science students is how can we infuse all this kind of knowledge into our curriculum, because the times we tend to concentrate mainly on the technical aspects, the technology and stuff like that, and we then forget some important things such as information security, to really infuse it into our curriculum. That being said, what sort of courses, Manqoba, would you recommend that we advise our students to take? Probably could be professional courses and so on and so forth around computer security, because I understand it's quite a lucrative market out there, if you're a computer security expert. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bertho, and again, thank you for joining us today. It's good to have you. I think when I joined, you were already here, if I remember very well. Yeah, I think you were my senior. so thank you. And I agree with you. I think right now, information security, it's one of the subjects that universities or learning institutes needs to be intentional about them. Cybersecurity, they need to be intentional about. I know that there are some short courses about cybersecurity and all that, but as you mentioned, having that as part of the curriculum, I think it's very important. But then your question was, what type of courses can students take? There's quite a number of courses that are offered by even online institutes around cybersecurity, for example. And I think they can start there, because some of them, they are offered at a very light scale, or the content is very light for almost anyone to understand and be able to apply. They can start there. Cybersecurity, information security, and all that. But again, perhaps back to the universities, they might need to also include that, if they haven't yet, they might need to include courses around information security, as much as there are courses around database administration, which eventually becomes a career for other people who are database administrators today. It's also very important to have that information security course as part of the curriculum, because now we know that eventually you can become an information security specialist, or you can become an information security risk manager and things like that. So that becomes very important to understand that element of protecting information. And as I think as we continue with this cyber life, the value of information is going to be even more than what it is. And I'm sure we also know that what we have perceived, what we used to perceive as the value of information before, is not compared to what it is right now. Information is more valuable right now. As I've shared on my previous slide on the breaches, there's a lot of money that cyber thieves are making by stealing people's personal information. Even organizations, they suffer ransomware, and it's not really because they sabotaging the system. When a cyber attacker launches a ransomware, it's because they are preventing you from accessing business information that you need to do your business process, your business activities, and you'll need to pay money for you to have access to that information and services and processes. So there's just a lot of value in protecting information. So that value, needs to be understood and then start, bringing the right content to ensure that when people enter into the learning space, they understand that value of information, but also above that, they also, learn how to go about protecting that information. Yeah, so in a nutshell, short courses that are available online, it could work, but again, for a long term and in a strategic manner, universities need to definitely infuse the protection of information in the curriculum.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mngomezulu. In the interest of time, before we can hand over back to Prof. Amadigan to close our beautiful session, Mr. Mngomezulu, before we let you go, can you please just tell us a bit, in a minute or two, about your book, your latest book, or your most recent book? What is it about? Of course, just the process of putting together the book, how also former Minister Malusi Gaba got involved in that process. So yeah.
Oh, okay. So my Facebook is it is titled "To Bring Back My Identity." It's a book about protection of personal information. As I've mentioned, that your identity, it is your personal information. It's information that identifies you, right? So how this book came about. I was providing information security awareness service in one of the companies around here in Gauteng, and I realized that employees, they don't have much knowledge about personal information and how to protect, that information. So as I was, providing that service, they were equipped, but I realized that people out there, they don't have access to this information, and yet they are also victims of identity theft. A person that is even a taxi driver, when they lose their ID, it could be used to commit identity fraud. Any person out there, is a target. So then I then created the book to help people that does not have the privilege of accessing information that perhaps certain organization they can pay for, So it was more of an awareness kind of a book to say, as a societal member, just understand that your information is valuable. There are people who are looking for your information, and they will find it even on the dustbins. When you receive a letter, a statement of some sort, you just read it and put it in the dustbin. But people that understand the value of information, they'll go into the dustbin and get that information and use it against you. So that's what the book is all about, and that's how it came about. But again, while I was writing that book, I realized that I had an ability that I was not aware that I possessed, that the ability of writing and the ability of publishing, because I wrote and published the book. And back then, I think I wrote it in 2014, and the Minister of Home Affairs was Malusi Kigaba then. So I needed a stamp on the book, and so I decided that perhaps at that time the right person to sort of, you know, put a stamp on this book is the person that is ministering the issuing of identities to the public of South Africa. So I sent an email to his office. I didn't know him. I sent an email to his office. I just stated what is it that I'm doing, and I need him, you know, to write a foreword of the book. And fortunately enough, by the grace of God, and they responded. We set up a meeting. We met. We spoke about it, and you know, he wrote the foreword, put it in the book, and you know, then that's how it was done. But again, after that, as I've mentioned, I discovered my other abilities, which led me to write my other book, which is about talent now. To say, I think as people, we have abilities that we are not aware of. We have gifts and talents that we are not aware of. So how do we discover those gifts? How do we tap to those potential that are just lying dormant because we're not aware of, you know? And then I wrote a book around that on how to discover, you know, your talent. But I backed it, or rather I pushed it towards parents to say, as a parent, how do we address this subject of children growing up not knowing their identity or not knowing their natural abilities, all right? And then after that, I wrote the latest one now that says, as a student, how do you discover your talent? How do you discover what you're passionate about? And then how do you use this information to align it with a career that is suitable for you, all right? Because if you're going to come and study music, and only to find that you're not musical, you're going to struggle later on. So we need to be aware of those natural abilities that comes natural to us, and the things that we're passionate about. Use that information to come up or to decide on a career that, you know, you'll enjoy for the rest of your life. So the latest book then is titled Talent, Passion, Career Alignment.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Mngomezulu, how do we get hold and buy all these books? I'm sure a lot of people are wondering.
Yeah, so the first one, What is My Talent, and Talent, Passion, Career Alignment, that one is available on different bookshops around the country, exclusive books, bargain books, Protea books. So if there's a bookshop around you, you can just go and check if it's there. They can either order, or if they don't have it, you know. But again, you can get it directly from me. I did write my what is it, email address, but I'll also type it here on the chat box, Manqoba 18 Passion. So you can just email me directly, and then I'll get it posted to you, you know. But as I've mentioned, you can also check your nearest bookshop. And then the other one, I Bring Back My Identity, that one is also available online on Amazon. But if you want a physical copy, you can contact me directly as well. Then I'll make sure that you get it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mngomezulu. I know we are out of time. If we can just request Prof. Adekan to close the session formally for us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, our lecturer, and thank you for the moderator of the session. I'd like now want to hand over to our Deputy Dean Research to please do the vote of thanks. Professor Leclerc, please. Prof, are you there? Hello?
Thank you very much, Prof. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to thank the presenter, Mr. Mngomezulu, and the Computer Science Department for organizing this 60th anniversary celebration for the University of Zululand. And I would like to thank also all the people who attended from different departments and all the alumni from computer science. I hear that many of them were attended this session, and this was a very well presented information that we all got the information concerning the cybersecurity. And I hope this will help not necessarily the students and the lecturers, but the university community as a whole. With this, I say thank you very much, the presenter. Thank you, Prof. and the chair.
Thank you to everyone for making it through and spending your valuable time with us today as we celebrate the University of Zululand 60 years. His email, Mr. Mngomezulu's email, is right on the chat section. You can just copy there and be able to text him so that you can be able to buy his books. Let's all buy all of his books and support our very own. Thank you very much. Until next time, peace and love.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.